What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Brewhaus. We have two guests today. Two. We got Josh, who was on last week, and my main man, Stephen Wilson. What's going on, brother?
AKA Swilson.
Hey, Wilson.
So Wilson.
Thanks for having me here. This is fun.
It's funny. It's like I haven't seen you, I don't know, years, right?
It's been a long time. It's been years. Yeah.
I mean,
he popped on in the Zoom, and I was just like, oh, man, he's just Wilson. He's just back up.
It is me, just a little bit older.
We've bumped into each other at some concerts and tailgates over the years, but it's still been a while. So it's always good to see you, Swills.
I know.
It's
always good to see both of you too. I'm repping today.
Oh, nice.
2013 tour show. That was the Camden.
That Camden show we actually watched part of quarantine is that we're watching like 2 or 3 concerts a week, and we watched that Camden show. I think Copperpot did a version of it. We were watching that the other day. Yeah. So I know it's a live tracks too. So
yeah, when I first saw that they were gonna put it up, I pre-ordered it immediately.
Yeah, I have it too.
That was probably one of the most exciting moments when they did the live from New York, and it was at Citi Field, and Josh texting during it when they came out to take the picture on the stage, and Josh just texts everybody in a group chat. He goes, "Boys, I think we're on a live tracks here," and it was.
And you got like the not even live tracks. You got like the full on
Yeah, I mean they definitely take because they did multiple shows. It's the same thing how like comedians do it. They film their special and they'll have 3 days. They'll film 3 shows and they'll pick from the best of those 3. Like they'll pull the bits. That's why like if they have a sequential. If it's a Friday, Saturday show and they have 3 shows, they'll wear the same attire. Yeah.
With that, I think they went with night 2. They went with the night you were there. The first night was
we were there for that was Nacho's Grande night.
Yeah. The first night was also really good. They only played like probably 17, 18 songs. They were all like longer, lengthier ones. I think that they just had a really good show the second night too. So I think that's why they went night 2. It was also like 110 degrees the first night, I feel like.
Very hot.
That was where we got the fake ticket.
You got a fake ticket?
Jeff got a fake ticket because he had we had clear cups for tailgating. So they the NYPD like came over and they were like, look, my boss is being an ass. Like he's making us write up tickets for you guys having clear cups. But if you guys just show me an ID, you can toss it when I leave. And he wrote like Jeff Carobo, like a fake birth date. And then the people next to us gave us cups, and we took a picture with like the cups, the concert tickets, and the ticket that the cop gave us.
Yeah,
that was a good time.
Yeah, that was a really good, fun concert. But so let's dive into the beers. What are you guys drinking?
Supposed you want to lead off?
Yeah, sure. So I have this wonderful Shiro's Delight from Allagash out of Portland, Maine. It was I think it was bottle room only. So I'm all about the one thing I love about Allagash is that they have a cool ship. They're like one of the few. I think there's probably like less than 10 breweries in the U.S. that have an actual cool ship, and getting really into the mixed fermentation stuff, because I mean they wanted to emulate the Belgians, so that's how I like all the language and stuff, all the cool ship. So yeah.
So that's like in like when you see I think I want to say like Anchor Steam in San Fran, do they do that? Mm-hmm. Like it's like so it's an open vat, and the concept is that you catch wild yeast out of the air, and it helps with like flavor development or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like in Belgium, that's how they just have these like kind of barns essentially where they have the windows kind of open at night, and whatever is like in the air gets in the beer. And I guess the air in Belgium is like special with the little, kind of microbes and bacteria. So that's how that whole thing started, was just like,
and that's when you get like flavors in the beer that you're like, oh, that's a weird taste, but it's good.
Yes. Yeah.
And it comes from like is that the same thing like with, because I had a sour last week, blasted a motorcycle, wild hogs. I had a sour last week, and it was it's like Brettanomyces, whatever.
Yeah, Brettanomyces.
Brettanomyces. Is that like the same concept, or is it just specific?
It is, but the difference is that Brettanomyces is actually a strain of yeast, whereas like Lactobacillus and Acetobacter and stuff, those are actual like acetic
like
acid.
That's what develops from like wild yeast.
Yeah. But Saccharomyces, which is like what regular yeast is kind of like in the air too. So, but like Brett gets my favorite kind of descriptors, which are like barnyard or horse blanket. Those are all those kind of like super earthy. Like, if you ever had like saisons that are from Belgium, where it's just like earthy as hell and kind of like musky in a way, but it's like good.
Yeah.
That's from the Brett. And the nice thing is that Brettanomyces, when it's like young, it has kind of these like fruity esters, which is like one of my favorite descriptors. These lighter kind of fruit notes, but then the longer that Brett kind of sits around, that's when it really starts to get funky and kind of like I said, like barnyard, like those like real kind of funky flavors.
Yeah. That's what the first time I had a saison, I tasted it, I was like, that's like odd. It just seems like you can't quite capture like what the oddness is to it, but you're like, oh, all right. And then you're like, no, I like that. It tastes good. More please. I had said last week, it's kind of like dry aged steaks are the same way. Like the concept of using mold, which you would think would be bad, it's eating the steak, and then it creates this like for steaks, it creates nutty flavors in the steak, or like funky cheese almost.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait a minute, but what'd you cook this in? It's like, no, it's just the steak. But that's how like it works for. Oh man, my beer just went flying.
Hazards of drinking outside.
Yeah, well, the can. But yeah. So, what does Josh have?
So we were talking about this earlier, how Allagash was one of my favorite breweries that I visited, just because of how beautiful it is there. I mean, it's in like an industrial park, but the place is absolutely beautiful. We actually went there on our way out of town. We were in Maine for the weekend, and we stayed. Our entrance to 95 was right by where Allagash is, so we stopped there on the way out of town. And I bought. We were just talking also before about Cool Ship Resurgam. That beer basically changed my approach to beers, where I was strictly like an IPA guy, and it got me into trying other things. However, on that trip, we went to one of my other favorite breweries in terms of like their beer lineup, which is Maine Beer Company. So I have a couple of their beers here, actually. Two of my favorites are Another One and Lunch. Both good beers, but I saw another one that I hadn't tried before, which is Spring, which is what I'm actually drinking right now. Ooh. So yeah, they're not cheap. They're they're like $7 a beer, and that to me is cheaper than I've seen it sometimes. But yeah, it's just they constantly put out good beer. We stopped there on that trip too. We went up there on a rainy part of the day, and it's apparently they've opened up a new part of their brewery, which is also supposed to be pretty beautiful. And I mean, you can't really go to Maine. Some of those places up further in New England, like Maine, Vermont, no matter where you go, it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, I like the fact that Maine Beer Company, like their bottles and their stuff is just minimalist. Like it's just a plain, like I like the cool artsy labels too, like that you see and you're like, oh, that catches my eye. But like now they're like, no, our beer speaks for itself. It's just we'll just put the word lunch and in simple font on a paper.
Yeah.
And that's how they kind of lit. Like I feel like that's their whole thing. Like they do the whole 1% for the planet thing. So like 1% of proceeds of everything go to like environmental charities or foundations or whatever. And I feel like that's part of being in Maine. Like you have to be that way. And they just
Environmentally conscious.
Yeah, I think everything that they do is just kind of like we're a small place in Maine, and we're part of this community, and we want to continue to be part of that and support it. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
I also have my Allagash glass though, so that's I'm all Maine today.
But you wore the Maine Beer Company shirt last week.
Yeah, I figured I would go opposite and go Maui today.
You just went you went East Coast and then you went far East Coast.
Also very beautiful brewery. So.
Well, as soon as my camera light adjusts here.
So go ahead.
No, what were you gonna say?
I actually had a question for Swils. I was gonna say, like, what's your go-to? Like, what if you're looking for a beer to drink? Like, what's your go-to? What's your like top beer? What's your style? What would you go to above all else?
I mean, I think it's got to be like some kind of barrel fermented sour. I just like the complexity. Yeah. You know, like if I'm at the beer store and I'm looking for something that I want to like get into, then yeah, probably like, not a kettle sour, definitely some like, wood age fermented, blended situation, just because I like that complexity of flavors. But at the same time, like if I just want to grab something from the store and just like crush it, I mean, obviously New England's IPAs are still like are still good. I do like kettle sours. I just think that the flavor profile is just a little kind of, it's not like super, it's more than one dimensional, but it's not, it's very like you get the flavor up front for like a second and then it kind of fades away.
Yeah. That the other thing too, if you think about it with like the New England IPAs, is like they're very big on the flavoring of it being like fruity, whatever, but the mouthfeel is they're very they linger. Like they don't leave your tongue, and I don't know why, but they just don't. So it to me, I like them, but I don't. Like I
think it depends. I think they have to kind of like find their each brewery has their own way of kind of dealing with it, but some are good, some are bad. That's just how beer is.
Yeah.
My dad was
I mean, Treehouse is obviously still like leading the class in that world,
Yeah, I haven't gotten there yet. Actually, on that trip we passed Treehouse twice and it was closed both times we passed it. So I still haven't been up there, and it's probably only 2 hours from here. Like I could make a quick trip up, but
you should.
Yeah, I think that'll be once this whole thing ends. That'll be a bucket list thing.
That's what Josh's dedication, because Josh has been making runs to go get beer during this quarantine.
Yeah,
and it's like he drives an hour each way to Nebco, right? Like it's
yeah, that was the last time I went up there was probably early April, end of March. But yeah, I went up to New England Brewing Company, got some fuzzy baby ducks and Stegosaurus, their double. But yeah, it was about 45 minutes both ways. Still in Connecticut though. I'm staying in the area, staying local.
Yeah.
Oh, I miss those days.
I'm drinking a double IPA from Stone Beer Movie Lions.
Okay.
Beer bomb.
Double dog.
Yeah. Rosen, you grew up near there, right?
Well, I mean, Frederick's like it's like an hour from where I'm at, but yeah, I mean, Flying Dog was one of the breweries of beer that I used to sell when I worked at the distributor.
Gotcha.
Doug's a Frederick guy, or at least he lived there for a while after college.
Yeah, I think he's still down there.
He might be, yeah.
That's Western
ETF,
Maryland,
as they
right?
say.
Is that Western Maryland?
I think so, because you have to go on 70 west to get down there. So my
It's not
directions
like
are always like
it's not like as far out as like Hagerstown though, right?
it's
Or
a little bit
even like
closer.
Frostburg. Yeah.
It's like Hagerstown is probably like 20, 30 minutes like past Frederick, but still like going on 70. Yeah.
Yeah, Crowdle one time drove us out to the Hagerstown outlets on on one of the summer days. Awful
Bless
experience.
Crowdle. Bless Crowdle.
He's a special individual.
I like the appearances of Mr. Jobs in the background.
Just casually. He hasn't sat down since 9 o'clock this morning. He's been outside, maybe even earlier.
I hope he's wearing sunscreen.
Oh yeah.
He's been wearing long sleeves.
Long sleeves.
He's been going like the Energizer Bunny.
Nice.
Just doesn't stop.
With the beer, you gotta drink beer like it's for you married guys. You gotta drink beer like it's another lady.
That is facts.
That's a tip there. Tip right there.
That's too deep. Too deep.
Too deep.
Joe, what do you think about the beers that Stone's putting out lately?
Well, we kind of touched on it last week about like the bigger name craft brewers, and it's like it's not really fair to call them craft brewers anymore. It's just beer at this point to me. I'm not worried because I don't care. You're still an artist if you can make something that tastes this good. Like even this, like Fear Movie Lines, like it's a great double IPA, tastes good, I enjoy it. But you're worried if that your favorite artist is gonna sell out. You know what I mean? Like you're like, oh no, because like we were talking about Goose Island was purchased by InBev and Anheuser-Busch. And if you would have asked me 5 years ago, Goose Island IPA was like a great intro IPA.
Yeah.
But now that it's owned by InBev, are they gonna like change or alter things for like not make it as bitter, just so that commercially it works across the board? Like you're worried about that kind of stuff. Well,
I mean, it seems like because AB gobbled up a bunch of stuff. They gobbled up.
They own New Belgium.
They bought Wicked Weed too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was like one of their first ones they bought.
That was the shocker. That was the they'll never sell out, and then it happened.
So the story of like kind of related to some of the Wicked Weed stuff, right?
No,
I know a very small amount of it.
None.
Yeah, so I guess some of the guys because they sold out because they got paid. They cared about the beer, but I think part of like one of the guys who started it, his like father or someone in his family like created Proactive, like the acne medicine.
Oh wow.
So like he was able to like put in like a bunch of money.
Rodent Fields or whatever.
Yeah. So he like had bread to kind of invest in the beginning, but obviously
Sorry.
You're good. But obviously they cared about beer, but it was like I think they were also just looking at it as an investment opportunity.
I mean, it's hard to say, like, if you're going to get, like, the idea of capitalism and business is that you make money. It's not, there's part of it where, like, you do what you love, and I'm sure that they still love doing what they did, but when you get an offer as high as they probably got, it's hard to hard to turn that down.
That's why, like, stating, like, oh, you're afraid that, I said, you're afraid that your favorite artist is going to sell out. It's like, if I was in their position, I'm selling out. Like I want the money.
Yeah.
I mean, we've probably been through that with some of our favorite bands too. Like you root for them at the same time. Like these are people that you kind of feel like are your friends almost. Like you hope they do well and are successful, and you like the stuff that's not like, you like the deep tracks and you like the stuff that you learned and loved, but you also want them to do well. So selling out is not always a bad thing.
And change.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel. Like both going back to music, but for me, like for KG Elephant and Jay Roddy Walston in the business, like I saw them going back now like 6 years, and KG Elephant like had their kind of rise and then faltered back, but now is like getting bigger and bigger. You're like, oh, their earlier stuff is so much better and this stuff is so poppy, and it's like, no, but that's the point. Like, you need to sell out. Like, yeah, it sucks to sell. If you can sell out and if you can make money and still create good quality content, beer, music, whatever, art, like, why not?
Yeah. And I think once you get that success, you know, things change. And like when you're in that dark place and you're brooding and like getting all that the deep dark tracks, you know, then when you start to become popular, you're not like in those situations. So it's harder to recreate.
There's not the same motivation.
Yes.
To do it.
I think that's part of, there's also an evolution to it, like where, you know, talk about music, and I'm sure it's the same with beer, like where you are changing, you're growing. I mean, you talk about a band that started in their teens that is now in their 40s and 50s, like the music's going to sound different. Same thing with the beer. Like as the brewery grows older and you're not brand new anymore, you have to evolve, because otherwise if you're just putting out the same thing over and over again, no one's going to come back.
Yeah.
I
think in America it's definitely true, because you know there's over 7,000 breweries in the US, but it's interesting because conversely, like in Germany and in Belgium, you know, these Trappist breweries, they just make the same stuff, you know?
Right, yeah.
Don't buy it. But it's like, but they've been established for like decades. You know what I mean? Or like 100 years or whatever. But
yeah, you have Monk's Brewing.
Yes. You know what I mean? Like that's but I think that's history, you know, whereas like people like look at Dogfish, you know, they're always trying to come out with different stuff. And some of the stuff wasn't really sticking, but what saved them a couple years ago was Sequench, honestly. Like, you know, they had a hit with Sequench, and it really, like, I mean, the beer is fine. I like it. But, you know, I think there's a syndrome where some breweries, they make too many SKUs just looking to be different, but it's not always good.
I think that's Dogfish's thing, too, and they have so many that you're like, oh, I can't keep track. It's like I don't know, and it's like, okay, great. You have the staples. You have 60, 90, 120, right? Yeah. Then they introduced 75, and then there was like 75 maple, and then they have
61, which was 60 with the grape must, the red wine grape must.
Yeah, like, and then you have raison d'etre, and it's like, well, how many more beers do you want me to buy? Yeah. Like, and no knock to them. Like they're off. Like he's Sam. What's his name? Sam Calagione.
Yep.
He's just like, he's quirky. He's weird, and he's like, let's try whatever and make it good. And like, yeah, there's no doubt that they're good. But but why? Why make so many? Well,
I mean, he had like a big power move. Like, you know, him and Boston Beer and Dogfish are like, you know, the same umbrella now.
Yeah, and they made that them and Stone, Sam Adams, they all made that alliance of the like craft brewers that you see the stamp on the beer, which is cool. Like, yeah, I get it, but like it comes back to like, I don't mind you selling out as long as there you go. I don't mind you selling out as long as the beers don't get changed, but like. That's a matter of, do you have good litigators? You can't change our recipes. You know?
So with the American breweries, do you see them reacting to one another? Like something else hits somewhere, like something becomes popular in one part of the country and the others try to replicate that and match it? Or are they kind of staying true?
Everyone is trying to. Well, I mean, some are staying true. Like the small guys who are like kind of hipsters, like they stay in their lane. But ones who have kind of grown to success, but kind of the success isn't maintaining that. Like one big thing was a couple years ago, lagers were like hot shit. They were like, everyone started making these craft lagers at the same time, and it's like, okay. And then milkshake IPAs were the thing, and then hazy IPAs were the thing, and then kettle sours were the thing. Fruited kettle sours, because it's like, you look at some of these smaller breweries and they're making really fun stuff, and then it gets ramped up. That's where beers like Sequence come from, or I think, didn't Stone have like some kind of kettle sour? Can't remember the name, but yeah, I mean, it's funny because the breweries, when they see like a hot style, I mean, there was glitter beer was like a hot thing for like 2 seconds, where there's a brewery in Baltimore called Dewclaw, and they had this beer called Unicorn Farts that was in like List or whatever,
Yeah.
and it was like a kettle sour that was supposed to kind of taste like Fruity Pebbles, but it had glitter in it, and it was like, and I was selling it, and it's so like everyone wanted it, and when they couldn't get it, people were like bashing Dewclaw, like how could they run out of beer, like these people get so greedy. But I think, but it's tough. It's tough as a brewery because it's like the consumer just wants the next beer, the next beer, the next beer. The brand loyalty isn't really there as much, so they have to kind of adapt to what is like being bought.
Well, I guess from a distributor standpoint, your consumer is the vendor for the consumer. You're like a B to C to C. You know what I mean? Like you're not a B to B or B to C. You're business to consumer to consumer.
Yeah.
Because they're buying from you and then people are buying from them. So it makes sense that they have no brand loyalty because what do they care? They care whatever their people buying beer are buying. And if they're not educated, they don't care. They just want a beer. Like.
Yeah, and I think sometimes the stores get like caught up in what's hot as opposed to seeing what's hot, but also kind of trying to build brands up.
Mm-hmm.
Because whereas like when the market wasn't as saturated, and I came in like when it was really saturated, but I think there was more of like, all right, these local guys support us, so we're gonna like, when people come in, they're like, hey, what's good? You kind of send them to like a local brand that like you have a good relationship with. Now it's kind of just like, what's the best deal? What's the new hot thing that you have? So that they can push it to the consumer, like at the store level.
Right.
Because that's where you see like local became like a big thing a couple years ago, and that's why it's like brands like Dogfish, Flying Dog, New Belgium, Goose Island, stuff like that. They have to kind of change their ways. And like New Belgium, for instance, like they make some of the best sour beers in America.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the guys who was there right when the company started, he used to work for Rodenbach, which is like a famous brewery in Belgium. So like they have I think like 30 fooders, which are like these big wooden vats these big wooden vats that it's kind of like a cool ship, but it's wood instead of stainless steel. And that's where all these beers like Le Terroir and La Folie, which are like super awesome, like, barrel fermented sour beers. But then they do all these label changes for like Fat Tire, and then they come out with Voodoo Ranger, and there's like Voodoo Ranger Pale Ale.
There's Voodoo Ranger like Paradise.
Yeah. So it's like they're trying to find something to stick.
It was huge when they came into Connecticut a couple of years ago. Like everybody was so pumped that they were coming in, and everybody went for Fat Tire, and it's like, I mean, I guess.
To me, it's a better tasting amber ale if you don't want like a Budweiser or You know, like it's not the same. Yeah. It's not a lager, but it's a better tasting beer if you're not into the weird.
I mean, again, though, what Swilson was saying, like, I guess I'm the consumer, but like, I'd rather drink a local brewery's version of whatever than you know.
Yeah, but not everybody has that. There's still people today that like, even you know, when I get beer, they're like, what is that? Like, what are you drinking? And it's like, oh, of course you're drinking that weird name beer. And it's like, yeah, it tastes
the best part.
Better. It tastes better. The beer you're drinking tastes like piss.
Yes.
I also don't mind those people. Like, if you want to drink a beer and you want to go and drink a Miller Lite or something like that, go ahead. Like, why not? Yeah. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
I think I used to be like anti people drinking. Like, if you weren't drinking craft, like, you suck. But now it's kind of like, you know, as long as they're drinking, especially after working in the beer industry, it's like, as long as they're drinking beer, that's what matters, because a lot of consumers are actually moving away from beer and into like spirits.
Well, that's what like I think the big grab at the consumer was when you started seeing a lot of these session ales come out, was because you get the people who could drink, you know, 6, 7 Bud Lights or whatever in a night, 8, whatever, and then they switch over to 8. Switch over, maybe 15. I don't know. But you switch over to a craft beer, and if you drink the same amount, your head is gonna hurt the next day.
Found that out last night.
Yeah. So yeah. I think the session beers were their power grab at the casual beer drinker. You know, it was their way of trying to get people in. And I don't know, I think it was mildly successful. I think there's more people now who don't turn their nose up when I say I have an IPA.
Yeah.
Like,
I think we talked about it last week too. Like the hype around these beers is what created kind of that cult movement towards them. And I think that, you know, we kind of talked last week that the hype sometimes outdid the beer. Like there was a disappointment when you got to one, and it was like, why are people waiting in line for this?
Yeah.
I wish I could have been there for this talk. I love these talks.
Well, see, like,
because to me, like, you have to develop your own likes and your own tastes, and just because somebody says that this is good doesn't mean that that you like it. Like, you have to find your own way and your own thing, and that's how it should be with anything, but especially with beer. I mean, who cares what other people think? Just like what you like and enjoy it.
Yeah. See, like, that was my thing from last week. We were talking about like the hype, and I had said that my goat was Pliny, like, because all the internet forums said that that's the greatest IPA ever, right? And I stumbled upon it randomly in San Francisco at a convenience store, and I was like, oh my God, this is the beer I've been looking for like 7 years, and it's just here. A litany of bottles of Pliny the Elder are here. So I bought 2, cracked one open, and it was disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not terrible, but it's like, it's not like the gates of heaven didn't open.
Yeah, yes.
When it hit
the angels came out of the bottle. Like,
so for me, being you know, kind of always growing up right on the fringe of New England and now being in New England, Heady Topper was the one that was the you need to go up to Vermont and get your hands on that, and you can only get it within 20 miles of the brewery, which has changed over the last few years. But I wouldn't say I was disappointed when I got up there. It's a very good beer.
Heady's still pretty solid.
It was still very good, actually. I still like it a lot. But at the same time, like, I understand that there's hype around it, but it's not that it's necessary. It's that it's, you know, there's all this talk and there's all this, everybody says like, this is the best thing you'll ever have. And was it really good? Yeah, it was, it's probably up there towards the top of my list, but it's, like, you know, there's other beers too. They all exist. They're all there.
To me, flavor and taste, it's subjective. So what's good to you may not be good to me.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, like Wilson said, like if you're drinking, that's fine by me. I respect it. Like whatever. I'm not gonna judge. I don't care. There was a time where I judged and said, you know, oh God, like, you know, Miller and Bud is reserved for swine at tailgate, but like I tailgated too, so like who am I to judge? Like why
I love being that swine.
Yeah. Like honestly, like I love cracking a Bud Light at a tailgate and getting fired up for a football game or a baseball game. Like
there's nothing better. I switched to I switched to the Altogether, which was the other half in New York. Came out with this. It's like an open-ended recipe, open-ended artwork on the can. So our local Half Full brewery, which is across the water from me here, they did their version of it this week, and all that they ask is that a portion of the proceeds get donated towards some sort of hospitality industry. So in Connecticut, they're all doing it towards like the CT Hospitality Group, I think it's called. So it's all the breweries, all the restaurants, which is a good cause. I think most of the breweries around here sold out pretty fast with it. So I know Two Roads released theirs yesterday and they already sold out. So
oh wow.
Yeah,
I heard about this. I mean, Other Half is like wonderful brewery.
Yeah,
you know? And it's cool that they kind of have it open, because I think a brewery, Full Tilt in Baltimore, I think they like linked up with it, or or maybe it was like Oliver's or something. But yeah, it's cool that everyone's like kind of working together during this time.
Yeah, I mean, I can send you. I actually found the link for it, which was really easy to find. But it says like if you're a brewer, like contact us and we'll send it to you. They made it very simple. It's open for anybody, even if you're like a home brewer, you can have it. So like
the recipe.
I think so. Yeah, you can go I sent you the link yesterday. It's on their site. Like you can basically just say like, I'm in, and I don't know about home brewing maybe, but it seems like it's pretty wide open.
I mean, there's the way that it works in the home brewing world is that people are very easily quick to make clones. They can make clones and figure stuff out. Which malt, which hops, especially if they list it. I'm sorry. Watching something going on in my yard that's very interesting. My son is driving a Barbie Escalade with the other one in the passenger seat, and he's whipping it back and forth, and my little one's head is just going like this.
That's so funny.
So Swills, what I've learned today is that I need to talk to you more, and I need to get some recommendations from you, because I need to dive deeper and I need to increase my knowledge in the beer world, and I would love to do that.
Well, I'm here. It's good to talk to both of you, and I'm here for that. I've been kind of like, my feelings have changed over the years of beer, but like now that I'm not working in the beer industry anymore, I feel better about kind of getting back to the basics of like enjoying it for like what it is, and not trying to make it like too much more. Because I was like trying to do the whole Cicerone thing and all that stuff, and it's like, that stuff's cool, but at the end of the day, I think it's just about appreciating beer, and just like appreciating when you're drinking beer with people or by yourself, but it's like no one's gonna bow down to you if you got like certified Cicerone, you know what I mean? Like it's just a title. But it's cool.
That's one of those I'm president of the fraternity things. Like, okay, that's cool. No one else cares, Joe Blakely.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Man. Shots fired.
Wow.
Sorry, I was your vice president, so I was
fired. Wow, that was so.
I was even on a smaller scale than that. So.
Well, I was gonna say is like sommeliers get paid a lot of money. If you're really good at what you do, they get paid a lot of money. A Cicerone, like, how many places are you making beer recommendations? You know what I mean? Like, it's so small comparatively, and eventually it'll probably be on that scale. Maybe not, but like
I think
I considered it too. Like I looked into the Cicerone courses, but dude, it's just a long going. Like talking like over 1,000 hours of knowing it, and like now with beer, the way in the state of beer, like wine is the same. It's grapes and yeast, right? Like it doesn't change. It's the region of the grapes change, the dirt and the soil, whatever. But beer, the flavor, like, okay, now you got, like Trappist monk ales that are wild yeast, lambics, whatever, sours. And then you have people that make beers with fruity pebbles. And it's like, how am I supposed to know and discern? I think it's harder. There's more beer types than there are wine.
Yeah, 100%.
So you said, Swilson, that the market's kind of turning towards spirits. Where is that, like younger kids kind of growing up and turning 21 and not wanting beer, or is that like adults?
That's literally what it is. Yeah, because and it's funny because even though I was like the craft beer specialist at the distributor I worked at, we were still a Miller house. So I mean, a lot of the business was drove by Miller Coors, and it's like they would always have Miller Coors would always have these like focus groups, where they're like trying to come up with new products to like capture the younger crowd, because it's like they're not loyal to these legacy brands like Miller Lite, Bud Light, Coors Light. They want different things, but also it's just like, I guess it seems like the kids who are past us, they kind of are like more conscious about, they want to get more out of like a brand or like a product than just like, oh, it's popular, which is interesting. And
it's really interesting because I think of younger, I mean, to some people we're the younger generation, but I think of people younger than us, and I think like short attention span, like get me drunk faster. That's why I was thinking spirits over beer, but it's interesting from the marketing standpoint of it.
I think the real thing is the recent 21-year-olds after this past summer, it's seltzers. So, you had the war of the seltzers, and I've fallen victim to those seltzers. They're great. And if you're trying to be,
I had a couple today already.
Yeah. If you're trying to be carb conscious, you can drink those and get away with it. But like, I don't know how many brands just immediately flip the switch and were like, yeah, seltzers. You have Corona, Bud Light, Truly, Bon and Viv. Like, it's just, they're all out there.
Well, that's what happened is because these brands, like, because I was in the thick of it when the seltzer started. Truly, like from Boston Beer Company was like the first one, and White Claw came out, and like Truly was like taking the world on fire, and then White Claw really came through, and that's where it's like, I mean, Corona in the total beer world, Corona is still, pre-coronavirus.
Yeah.
Corona was leading
shut down their facilities.
Corona was leading like the beer industry in terms of like growth. Craft beer was kind of holding. Domestic like light lagers was kind of going down, but Corona Mexican lagers were like the hot shit.
Interesting, and especially going into this weekend. That's an interesting statistic.
Yep. Yeah, but then it was like all these people saw, oh man, these seltzers, like they don't take that long to make. Because lagers, you gotta wait, like at least craft lagers, you gotta wait 20, 30 days sometimes.
Yeah, you gotta lager the beer, which you put in the cold, and which is a whole nother thing. But yeah, the seltzers are technically beer.
Yeah, most of them are. Well, I guess they consider them like, I guess in the ATF or like the whatever alcohol thing, they call them like fermented malt beverages.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, but that's like the same as like Twisted Tea, Mike's Hard, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Interesting.
Which is like, because you think of them the way that they are, you would think that it's more of a spirit, but no, it's a beer.
Yeah. Yeah, because they have to use yeast to like ferment it as opposed to distilling it.
Right.
So that's like really why. That's like really the main difference.
Like those steel reserves your dad used to come down to Towson with. Death after 2.5 of those. Yeah.
But yeah, they had to change up and like get in on the seltzer thing because like like when Truly first came out and people started actually like understanding what it is, dude, it skyrocketed. Like Boston Beer was selling more Truly than they were Sam Adams. You know what I mean? Like it's just like all the growth in Boston Beer Company was coming from Truly. Wow. So then everyone in the industry, because all those big guys, they talk, you know, and they see like what happens in the market. They see what happens in these markets, and then they're like, man, these seltzer things. So they're like reporting back to their people, and then it's like, next thing you know, Bud Light seltzer, you know, I mean.
And then you get somebody
seltzer, like
then you get somebody charismatic behind it, like Post Malone. How are you not gonna sell?
Yeah.
Corona just had awful timing with their release.
Yeah. But like
not their fault.
And to me, I'm an easy target for marketing. Like I know how marketing works, but like I also know that my brain loves marketing, and I like Post Malone, so I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't I try these Bud Light seltzers?
It's funny, actually.
It's sketchy.
I think Metcalf was doing like a review of like all the different seltzers.
We were talking about getting him on.
He's on the list.
Yeah, he's coming up. I honestly, Joe and Swilson, I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think Swilson should be on always.
I mean, I've never done this before, but it's really fun. I'm enjoying that.
It's just,
it's what we would have done in college, just we're older.
Yes.
Well, some of them have classes now.
It's good because it's like I'm not bragging at all. It's just interesting because it's like I was a consumer. I was like a beer geek, and then I worked in the beer industry on like at the retail level, at the distributor level, and at the supplier level. So it's like I've worked all levels of like the 3-tier system. Yeah, and there's like unique things about each level that's like I think really interesting.
I think your perspective is one that I've been most interested in.
Yeah,
like that like for me, as a guy who likes to drink beer and likes to try different beers, like what you know is what I would like to know.
And that's why, like, too, like, same thing I was saying to Josh last week is that you learn these things from, like, there's certain things you learn in home brewing or being around a brewery. Like, that's where you learn the processes, where the flavor gets imparted from and whatever. But it's like, you know them, so why wouldn't we just have you on? Like, it just
yeah. But also, it's just good to like chat with you all.
Yeah. Regardless of that, it's
I fully expect that after we're done recording this episode, that we'll all stay on and talk a little bit. So,
well, I think it's a perfect time to wrap up the actual recording because this has been good. It's been great, and so I'm gonna end the recording, but we can all just stay on. So.
Thank you, Joe, for having us both. This is a lot of fun. I look forward to it every week.
I'm just a man. I'm just a man with a computer. Don't think.
With your kids driving Barbie Escalades in front of you and your dad giving us tips about beer in the background.
I'm gonna go grab another beer, guys.
All right.